I glanced out of my apartment window, the city lights glittering like tiny promises I hadn't yet touched. My silk blouse clung comfortably to me, soft and elegant, and I ran my fingers over its smooth texture, grounding myself. The sound of my phone buzzing on the marble countertop startled me, and I picked it up, reading the message that made my chest tighten. Family gathering at Dad's house tomorrow. He insists you come. My fingers trembled slightly as I set the phone down. Dad's birthday. My dad, the man who had always believed in me, but who also had a family complicated enough to make my life feel like a delicate tightrope act. Memories rushed in uninvited. I remembered that day vividly. The kitchen, bright sunlight streaming through the curtains. My niece, little Chloe, maybe 7 at the time, standing in front of me, soda in hand. "Grandpa says you don't," she yelled, and before I could react, the sticky liquid drenched my blouse. Laughter erupted around me, not kind laughter, but that sharp, teasing kind that left you exposed, small, embarrassed. I exhaled slowly, letting the memory settle like a stone in my chest. So much had changed since then. I was successful now, independent, but the wound that little act had carved into my pride, it still lingered. Tomorrow, I would confront it, and not as the girl drenched in soda, but as the woman I had fought so hard to become. I was 12 when it happened, a child trying to navigate a family that seemed to measure love in approval and disapproval, rather than warmth. That summer, Dad had invited everyone over for his birthday, a seemingly harmless tradition that always felt like a test. My brother, Jonathan, arrived with his daughter Chloe, her blonde curls bouncing like sunlight. She was sweet most of the time, but on that day she became a weapon of family judgment. I remember standing by the counter, nervously adjusting my plain cotton dress. I had just finished helping Mom with the decorations, my hands sticky from frosting. Chloe's little eyes narrowed as she approached me, soda can in hand. "Grandpa says you don't," she yelled, her voice sharp with the kind of honesty only a child can wield. Before I could respond, the cold, fizzy liquid cascaded over me, dripping down my arms and soaking my skirt. Time slowed. I felt the sting of humiliation burn hotter than the soda. Laughter erupted around me, Dad chuckling awkwardly, Jonathan pretending he didn't see, Mom offering a tight-lipped apology. My hands shook as I wiped at the mess, the sticky liquid clinging stubbornly to my skin, refusing to let me erase the moment. I could feel the eyes of the room on me, judging, amused, disappointed. But then, I heard Grandma's voice, soft and firm, cutting through the haze. "Samantha, don't let them decide who you are. Let your actions, not their words, define you." She handed me a small, carved wooden box, a keepsake she had kept for herself, saying it belonged to someone brave enough to claim it. That box became my talisman, a symbol of independence and quiet strength. I tucked it into my backpack that day, clinging to her words as though they were a lifeline. That night, I lay in bed, soaked clothes replaced by pajamas, the incident replaying in my mind. But for the first time, I felt a spark of defiance. I didn't have to stay small. I didn't have to accept ridicule or mockery as my place. I would carve my own path, away from the shadows of judgment and expectation. And in that moment, drenched and humiliated, I made a silent vow. One day, I would return, not as the girl Chloe embarrassed, but as a woman they would all recognize, and maybe even respect. After that summer, I buried the memory of the soda incident deep beneath late-night ambitions and early-morning coffee rituals. College became my sanctuary. I poured myself into classes, internships, and part-time jobs, never allowing anyone to see the quiet rage and hurt simmering beneath my polite smiles. That little wooden box from Grandma sat on my desk, its polished surface a reminder of the vow I had made. I would define myself on my terms. My first real mentor appeared in my sophomore year, Professor Elaine Whitman, a sharp, exacting woman who had built her own company from scratch. She noticed the intensity behind my quiet demeanor, the way I stayed late in the lab, correcting mistakes no one else cared to notice. "You have potential," she told me once, looking me in the eyes, "but you need to believe in it before anyone else will." Those words, so simple yet so weighty, fueled long nights and early mornings as I struggled to balance ambition with the nagging fear of failure. After graduation, I moved to a new city, carrying nothing but a suitcase, my laptop, and the old wooden box. The first year was brutal. I worked freelance projects, sometimes for less than minimum wage, often facing condescending clients who assumed I was too young, too inexperienced, too soft. But I refused to be beaten down. Every rejection became a lesson, every small success a stepping stone. Slowly, the wins came. Landing my first major client was a quiet triumph, a tech startup willing to trust a young, relatively unknown consultant. I worked late into the night, perfecting every detail, until the presentation felt flawless. When it finally succeeded, I allowed myself a small, victorious smile. Each success thereafter, a profitable project, a glowing referral, a freelance deal that covered more than rent, built an invisible shield around me, protecting me from the echoes of the past. I kept my growing achievements carefully hidden from my family. Social media posts were vague, professional but modest. They didn't know I had opened my own consulting firm. They didn't know that, in less than 5 years, I had built a network of high-paying clients across the country. They didn't know I was financially independent, emotionally fortified, and quietly proud. Evenings were my sanctuary. I'd sit on my balcony, sipping coffee, the city skyline stretching endlessly before me. The wooden box from Grandma sat next to my laptop, now more than a keepsake. It was a talisman of survival, resilience, and ambition. Every time I touched it, I remembered the humiliation, the sting of soda and laughter, and I let it fuel me instead of holding me back. I wasn't the girl Chloe humiliated years ago. I wasn't the shy, embarrassed child at my father's birthday party. I was Samantha Hayes, determined, capable, and quietly, devastatingly successful. And soon, the world, especially my family, would see the version of me they never expected. The morning of Dad's birthday arrived with an almost cruel sense of irony. The same sun that had once illuminated my humiliation now gleamed through my apartment windows as if cheering me on. I carefully chose a navy silk blouse and tailored trousers, elegant, understated, commanding, the exact armor I needed. The wooden box from Grandma rested in my purse, a talisman for courage. I took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of anticipation in my chest. Arriving at Dad's house, I was greeted by familiar faces. Mom bustling nervously in the kitchen, Dad smiling warmly but with that faint hint of surprise I remembered from my childhood, and Jonathan, my brother, trying too hard to look casual. And Chloe, little Chloe, now 10, wide-eyed and whispering to her mother. None of them knew what was coming. The house smelled the same. Baked chicken, vanilla cake, and that faint perfume of Dad's cologne. The living room was festooned with balloons and streamers. Yet, as I stepped inside, I felt a thrill of anticipation. This was no longer the space of my humiliation. This was my stage. I walked calmly toward the main gathering, letting my eyes sweep over the familiar yet strangely distant faces. My heels clicked softly on the wooden floor, a metronome of purpose. Conversations paused. Laughter dipped into silence. I could feel their surprise, their curiosity, their expectation that I'd still be that awkward girl who had once endured a soda shower in front of the entire family. And then I let them take it all in. My presence, my posture, the quiet confidence that radiated from every detail, the perfectly tailored outfit, the subtle shine of my hair, the faint scent of jasmine. I did not speak immediately. I watched as their minds tried to reconcile this poised, commanding woman with the memory of a 12-year-old drenched in soda. Finally, I opened my mouth, voice calm, steady, but powerful. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all again. I'm Samantha Hayes, the same girl you remember, but not the one you think you know. Eyes widened, mouths opened. Chloe froze mid-step, soda horror long forgotten, replaced with astonishment. I gestured toward my purse, pulling out the wooden box from Grandma, polished, smooth, a symbol of resilience. This belonged to Grandma, I said softly. She told me to define myself, not let anyone else's words decide my worth. I kept her advice close, and it's guided me to where I am today. I stepped closer to the living room center, letting the moment stretch. I run my own consulting firm now. I have clients across the country, a team of talented people, and yes, I'm financially independent. I don't need validation from anyone here. I created my own path, and it's working. The room was silent. Dad's smile faltered slightly. Mom's hands trembled. Jonathan's jaw tightened, and Chloe's wide eyes were filled with awe and a hint of guilt. They were absorbing the truth I had carried quietly for years, and I let them. Then, I added, with a subtle, almost ironic smile, and for the record, I don't spill soda on myself anymore. A ripple of tension broke into nervous laughter. But beneath it all was a dawning recognition. This was no longer the girl they had once underestimated. This was a woman who had turned humiliation into triumph, who had quietly built a life they had never imagined. The room still hummed with a mixture of awe, guilt, and disbelief. I could see the tension in their shoulders, the tiny shifts in posture, as they tried to reconcile the image of me before them with a girl drenched in soda years ago. But I wasn't here just to bask in their shock. I was here to set boundaries and to offer a path forward, but on my terms. I crossed my arms, letting the silence stretch, giving weight to the moment. I've worked hard to get here, I began, voice steady but firm, and I will continue to work hard. I'm proud of what I've achieved. But if any of us are going to move forward, it has to be different than before. I looked at Dad first. You've always been loving, but sometimes blind to the ways your expectations can hurt. I don't want a relationship based on guilt or disappointment. I want honesty, respect, and understanding. If you're willing, we can rebuild this, but it has to be mutual. Mom shifted uneasily, and I turned to her. Mom, I know you mean well, but you've often protected others at my expense. I need you to respect my boundaries and acknowledge my choices, even if they're different from yours. That's the only way we can truly reconnect. Jonathan swallowed hard, guilt flickering in his eyes. As for you, I said, fixing him with a steady gaze, you've underestimated me and sometimes used your position as my brother to undermine my confidence. If we're going to have any real relationship, you need to recognize me as an equal and respect my achievements without trying to overshadow or belittle them. And finally, I looked at Chloe, the little girl who had once thrown soda in my lap. She was older now, 10, but still that same bright, mischievous spark. Chloe, I said gently, you have a voice, and that's powerful. But words can hurt as much as they can help. Grandpa may have opinions, but it's your responsibility to speak kindly and considerately. If you want to be part of my life, you need to understand the weight of your words and learn empathy. The room was quiet. No one interrupted. I let my eyes sweep across them, silently asserting the shift in power. I was no longer the vulnerable, underestimated girl. I was the woman who had built herself, brick by brick, from the ashes of humiliation. I softened slightly, adding, I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to grow, and I want you all to grow with me. But it has to start with accountability, respect, and real effort. Old patterns, toxic habits, judgment, dismissiveness, they stay behind. We step forward, together or not at all. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for mine. Dad's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and even Jonathan's jaw relaxed, a tiny nod of acceptance. Chloe, still wide-eyed, whispered, I understand, and I saw sincerity there, a small but vital step toward change. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of calm power, a quiet satisfaction. I had confronted the past, reclaimed the present, and set the terms for the future. And this time, I would not let anyone, not even family, dictate my worth or path. The days after Dad's birthday felt like a delicate dance. Change didn't happen overnight, but I could feel the shift, subtle, promising, undeniable. Dad began calling me, not to critique or advise, but to genuinely ask my opinion, his tone warmer and more respectful. Mom started sending little messages of support, acknowledging my choices rather than questioning them. Jonathan made an effort to involve me in decisions, listening without the old edge of competition or judgment. And Chloe cautiously approached me one afternoon with a small gift, a handmade bracelet, colorful and imperfect, yet full of intent. "I made this for you," she said shyly. "I want to be a better niece." I smiled, feeling a mixture of tenderness and pride. Growth, I realized, is often quiet. Moments like these, tiny gestures, hold more power than grand apologies or declarations. I kept the wooden box from Grandma on my desk, polished and gleaming, a symbol of every struggle, every humiliation, every lesson that had brought me here. It reminded me of the girl drenched in soda and how far I had come, not just in wealth or success, but in resilience, integrity, and self-respect. Late that evening, I sat on my balcony, the city lights twinkling below like stars that had somehow fallen to earth. I sipped coffee, the aroma grounding me, and reflected on the journey. The pain had been sharp, almost unbearable at times, yet it had propelled me forward. The humiliation, the doubt, the laughter at my expense, all of it had forged me into the woman I was today. A woman who could face her past, set boundaries, and embrace the relationships she truly valued. The family that had once underestimated me was slowly transforming. They were learning respect, empathy, and accountability. And in the process, I realized I didn't just want them to change for me, I wanted them to grow for themselves. Their evolution, however tentative, felt like a gift, a validation that strength paired with compassion can indeed shift even the most stubborn dynamics. I leaned back, letting the night breeze brush against my face, and whispered softly to no one in particular, "I am the storm that learned to dance in the rain, and I will never be drenched by anyone's words again." It was a statement of survival, of triumph, of grace, a declaration that the girl who once wore soda like a badge of shame had been replaced by a woman who wore her strength like armor, elegant, unstoppable, and unshakable.